Stand up. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. My name is Peter Crosby. Joining us is Kendra Penry. We are two local candidates. So I am running for a congressional seat, District 2, which is all of northern Utah. And Kendra is actually running for a local House district seat. So I'm going to give her just a couple of minutes to go ahead and introduce herself. And then this format is very informal and very casual. This is a town hall because both Kendra and I believe very strongly that people should have the opportunity to directly engage with the individuals who are representing them. So tonight we'll answer your questions as best as we can. You may ask us anything you would like. I can't promise that we know all of the answers, but we'll certainly do our best to be honest and open about it. So without any further ado, Kendra.
Hi. I know many of you all in this room, but for those that I don't know, I am the executive director at Stokes Nature Center in my quote-unquote real job. But I am running for office for many reasons. I think I've had that conversation with several people. There's really one reason why you run for office. It's generally a series of things. And for me, it was everything from the work that I do at Stokes and wanting us to really take seriously the work to be better stewards of our environment, and that being land, air, and water, all of them are connected, to the work that I did for a long time as the spokesperson of the League of Women Voters here in Cache Valley, and wanting to be sure that all of our voices are heard in our electoral process. Even if your voice doesn't agree with mine, it still deserves to be heard. And the fact that our legislature has been trying so hard to make that not happen was really frustrating. And so just one thing after another, and I decided to run for office. For those that don't know, I'm not originally from Utah. I moved here about 7 years ago, and I love being here. I love being a part of the community that I made. I have an adorable super mutt puppy that also loves living here. So I have been very proud to call Utah home, but felt that it was time for South Cache Valley to have a choice in this election. As my opponent has been unopposed since 2018, so we needed to change that. So, who is my opponent? Casey Snyder, current House Majority Leader. Because if you're going to go, you might as well go good. So thank you all for being here. I am really grateful. Hearing from the people that would vote for me or vote for Peter is what really informs this whole process, and make sure that not only that you are heard, but that we are then able to represent you in a way that is meaningful. So thanks for giving me time.
Yeah, genuinely. So the advantage of having both a federal candidate and a state candidate is that as you ask us questions, we can approach it from both local and from national perspectives. And again, like I said, this is an open forum, so if you have a question, please feel free to ask. We turn the time over to you.
Peter, why don't you, for those who aren't as familiar with you, give some of your background as well?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So I have lived here in Cache Valley with my wife for about 18 of the last 20 years or so. We have been married 20 years this June. We have 3 daughters. Our oldest graduated high school about a week ago, and our other 2 are a sophomore and now an 8th grader, which they are very proud of. They are a large motivation for why I'm sitting up here today and not out there. So as my wife and I have had the opportunity to be elder millennials, which just means that we've hit basically every speed bump you possibly could in the road for the last 20 years, we came to the realization that the system is fundamentally broken, not just for us, but for our kids, and if they ever decide to have children, for them as well. We struggled to get into a house, but at least we have a home. Our daughter looks 5-10 years into her future, and I don't think she ever expects to be able to afford one. Our healthcare bills are expensive, and they're only getting more so. We've been through several economic challenges. We're in a serious one right now, and it's not getting better unless we do something fundamentally different. We have environmental concerns that here in the state we've known about for decades. The local legislature has done very little, if anything, and the national government has also not taken an active role in improving outcomes. And we've now reached a critical point, right? So the Great Salt Lake, if it doesn't get sufficient water, will create a disaster zone that spreads across all of northern Utah, which means my kids, your kids, Our grandkids have nowhere to live. We have nowhere to live. It will destroy our communities. We have a government that has become corrupt. We have pay to play, but it's not just pay to play anymore. It's an executive branch that pays itself with taxpayer dollars. It's a Congress that refuses to check government corruption. It is a pedophile in the office of the White House, a man who has participated in the buying, selling, and raping of children, and no justice is done. And our congressional representative stays silent. So that's why I'm sitting here. As far as my background, I have a couple of degrees in political science. I'm a first-time political candidate. I've never wanted to do this before, but something has to be done, so we're going to do it. My day job, I came up in corporate America. I did not like it very much. I started working at Utah State, where I spent about 8 years. I'm still an adjunct faculty member there, and I teach for a very cool program and work with brilliant colleagues. I've moved back to the private sector, but not corporate. It's a very small company. In comparison, it's privately owned, and I work directly to support higher education. So I'm a project manager and a director, and I've been doing that for about three years now, is when I moved back to the private sector. So I come from a military family, which means we're not native-born Utahns, but I am deeply rooted in the state now. This is our home, and we're going to make sure it's a good home for everybody else.
When you're elected, will you continue to have in-person town halls?
Absolutely. Also, what we'll do is I'll answer, and then Kendra will answer the next question. Kendra will answer, and then I'll answer. We'll just trade back and forth. Absolutely. So public service is about serving you. You're the people that we are supposed to be prioritizing. Your issues, your concerns are the problems that we're supposed to be solving. I can't solve those. Kendra can't solve those if we don't know what they are. And you have a right to let us know if we have failed you. If I have gone to Washington and I have made decisions that have made your life harder, I should face you and explain why I made those choices. You deserve that right because this is your government. And so absolutely. We've been holding town halls once a month, every month in as many counties as we can, and we're committed to doing that as long as you would like me to serve.
And definitely. It's a part of my campaign, making sure that people feel heard. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can always do exactly what every person is asking you to do, but still listening and ensuring that they know that their cares have been at least spoken with and attended to. And I've already started trying to do some of that process, and not only being a part of this, but also reaching out to all of the city managers in South Cache Valley, and can I set up a regular meeting with them as well, so that you're hearing from multiple perspectives what the towns within this district would need, because they're not all the same. What Providence and Nibley need is not going to be the same as Avon and Mendon, and simultaneously the same thing for the people that live here. So it has to be regular communication. And I will also say I would not only host town halls, I would advertise them so that you know when they are happening and that you will show up. Because I do know that that is also something that's been happening lately with some of our representatives saying that they were hosting town halls, but they never advertised it, and then no one showed up. And so they get to say they hosted it, but they didn't actually have to answer to anyone. So it's not only about having them, but making sure people know it's happening.
With the divisive nature, not only of the country, but of politics right now, how do you step into that newly elected?
You get the
Sure.
first
I
one.
get to go first. So first of all, I didn't mention this earlier. I actually have a degree in conflict resolution. It's actually international conflict resolution, which given the situation right now, sounds like I'm set up for a great career, but sadly, there's more money in conflict than in resolving conflict, so not a whole lot of jobs available right now. But one of the first things you learn about that is just about how to have difficult conversations. And that's more than anything what stepping into a divisive situation is about. Being willing to talk to people that don't agree with you, being willing to truly hear what they're saying, even if you don't agree with what they're saying, and then building from there. That means talking to the other people in office, listening to constituents on both sides of the aisle, and being able to continue without getting angry, but actually understanding where they are before you put forward what you are proposing. Because most people just need to feel heard. That's really all it is, where the anger is coming from, is feeling like they're not being heard. And we all understand we don't all get our way. You learn that very young as a child, but you still want to be heard in the process. And that's what conflict resolution boils down to, is just talking and showing up and being a part of the process. But simultaneously to that, being willing to call it out when something needs to be said, that it's not okay. And for me, it's always people over profit, so I'm going to speak up for people at all times, even if that causes division for those that might have money, or for corporations. But it's a matter of speaking up for the truth, being willing to listen, but then being willing to speak up for fact and truth, so that we are getting back to a place where we can at least agree that we have shared values. We all want a vibrant Utah that is healthy for our children to live in and to grow up in and have jobs. And let's start from there, and be able to come up with solutions that work for people.
Yeah, and I'm glad Kendra answered first, right? It made my job a whole lot easier. I think to her point, it really does start with recognizing that there's shared humanity, right? Everybody in that conversation has some fundamental things in common. The other thing is that at the end of the day, we're all Americans. And as Americans, we have some shared values that have always bound us together in our identity. We honestly, genuinely believe that as Americans, the rule of law is sacrosanct, that all should be equal before the law, that those laws should be just and they should be justly applied. That's a common ground we can always, or should always, be able to work from. As Americans, we do believe that if you work hard, that if you have a little bit of luck and support of people around you, you can have a better life than your parents did. And you can create more opportunities for your children than you had. That's the American dream in a nutshell. That if we work hard, the system itself should allow us to do more than the people who came before. That's something that we all hopefully share in common. And I honestly, genuinely believe that as Americans, we have a shared value that we recognize we do have a unique position in the world. We were the first modern democracy, and our experiment is not yet done. There are things that we do well. There are things right now that, quite frankly, are terrifying, that if we do not fix them, this experiment might fail. I don't believe that it will, because I don't believe that you will let it fail. And that is a shared value. I am old enough to have grown up in a system that did work better than what we have today. I am old enough to remember when politics was not a question of, is there a problem? It's how to solve it. That was the dialogue. We all recognized there were things that needed to be improved. We all recognized that there were opportunities that some people were missing. The question was, how do we best help people? We need to get back to that. And it's you here in this room that give Kendra and I the opportunity to have those conversations and to fix the system that has been fundamentally broken over the last 20 and 30 years. My girls have never seen a system that works. And that is not a legacy that I will leave.
I have a question about, I think everybody agrees with you. Most people that I know do, including people in the opposition, because that's what America's all about. However, I find that the opposition has appropriated that same theme as theirs and not ours. What strategy do you have to cut through that? We see the most recent primaries across the country and see how deep in the dirt they dig. What do you, as a being a newcomer to this field, how do you think you're going to be able to cut through that? What's your strategy?
I think the most important thing, one, is to recognize that there is not opposition on the other side. There are Americans that believe we should solve problems one way. There are Americans that believe we should solve problems in a different way. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if Blake Moore or Carrie Ann Lisenby wins that primary. They're not my opponent. My opponent, our opponent, is a broken system. That's our opponent. And when you talk to people across the political spectrum, I think it's really important that we all acknowledge that we can have different political ideologies and backgrounds and still recognize that we are unified in understanding it is the system itself that is broken. I have not been a lifelong Democrat. I was politically unaffiliated for years because I grew up in a military family. I grew up in a conservative environment. I grew up in an active Christian environment. I'm still active in my faith. And those were values that were embedded in me. I was a Republican state delegate at one point in my political life for a hot minute. It was 2016. I didn't think Donald Trump was a good president then. I don't think he's a good president now. I don't think he's well suited for it, for a variety of reasons. He won the election, and I unaffiliated again. I'm a Democrat today because last year, when I registered as a Democrat, I met people like Shannon in the back, or Shannon Barton in Box Elder, or Jeremy Thompson, or Danielle King, who are local Democrats who are just trying to do what they can to help the communities that they live in. And I realized that I can be that kind of Democrat. I can be someone who recognizes that the system is fundamentally broken, and I just want to be here to help. And I think today, again, as far as messaging, how do we cut across? We need to fundamentally acknowledge that we are all people and that we all have the same shared set of concerns. Nobody can afford anything now. Nobody can afford a house. If you have one, you're fortunate and you're never going to sell it because you can't get a new one. We can't afford health care. Health care has been cut by a Republican Congress. Healthcare access has been cut. Our retirements are at risk because, again, this Congress is starting to talk about getting rid of Social Security, which means the work that I did, the work that you did is being taken away from us when they get rid of those systems. Nobody can afford food. Nobody can afford gas. All of us are fundamentally suffering under that same oppressive, broken system. All of us are worried about the Great Salt Lake. When we look at the data center that has been talked about in Box Elder, when we showed up and spoke at the protest that was there at the second meeting that the county commissioners held, I promise you that the majority of those people who were there, they weren't registered Democrats. They were unaffiliated and they were Republicans who are angry that their government is ignoring them. They are angry that corporate profit is being prioritized over the needs of communities and families. Utahns aren't dumb. We all have pretty well-developed bullshit detectors. And we understand when we are being lied to and when people are trying to pull the wool over our eyes. And that cuts across the political perspective. How we message is we be honest. We are truthful. We are transparent. And if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you. If Kendra doesn't know the answer, she'll tell you. But what we will do is show up every day to make sure that your voice actually matters in our government. We are collectively tired of being ignored. We are tired of corruption. We are tired of people receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign donations to go ahead and push forward corporate interests. That's not a partisan issue. Healthcare is not a partisan issue. The Great Salt Lake is not a partisan issue. These are just the problems that we as Americans and Utahns have to tackle. And that's why we focus the message the way that we do. This isn't about an opposition. The opposition is a broken system. This is about us as Utahns uniting to fix that system. And if Blake Moore and Carrie Ann Lisenby are going to be obstacles to that solution, okay, that's their choice. But we're still going to fix that system. They either need to get out of the way or they need to help.
And I think just to get to the nitty-gritty of how we reclaim the messaging that we've been talking about, it starts with conversation and not just us having conversations. you being willing to have conversations with the people in your circles. Time and time again, there is so much research out there that talks about the impact of commercials, the impact of signs, the impact of all of these things on campaigns. But the thing that matters the most is a personal conversation. I put someone's sign in my yard in the last election that surprised a lot of my neighbors, and I got texts, "Why would you vote for that person?" And I was like, let's have a conversation. Come over and I'll tell you. And all three of them voted for him. Because it matters when you have, they never met him, the candidate. They talked to me. And so it's not about us necessarily always. It is about you. But at the same time, if you're part of a group and you think this group needs to hear this message and you're willing to get them together and have us come talk to them, let's do that. Give me a call and let's make that happen, because the way we reclaim messaging and the way we show people that we are here to represent them and work for them is by actually talking to them. When we stop talking to people, we other them, and that's where we are right now in this country, is we see the other side as an other, not as a person, and it becomes much easier to villainize them and much easier to ignore them. We're to the point now that if a Republican has the audacity to support a Democrat bill, we've got to vote them out. Who cares that that's against your own personal interests? It was a Democrat bill. You can't vote for that. And that's not okay. We should always be putting people's needs first, no matter who it is that brings that issue forward. So if you have the chance to talk to your neighbors, whether they agree with you or not, whether they've got Blake Moore's sign in their yard or they've got Casey Snyder's sign on their hay bale, please engage with them how you can so that we start those conversations, because that's how we bring people in rather than fighting against them.
Do you anticipate being able to have a public debate with the Republican candidates?
Well, that's an easy, no. I've been told flat it won't happen, because it would only hurt his chances in my district if he showed up to the meeting. So,
The,
I mean, if it offered the chance, yes, I would show up. I don't expect him to.
So it's not required.
No.
the debate commission will likely ensure that there is one debate between Blake Moore and myself at the federal level. If it's anything like the format that we saw during the primary, we will be strongly pushing for a different format. I don't think it is particularly conducive to a real conversation when each candidate has 60 seconds to respond to a complex topic. Quite frankly, I'd prefer more of a town hall style, where both, whoever wins that primary and I are able to sit in a room of Utahns, and you're allowed to ask questions, and we have some leeway in how we can respond and actually engage in a conversation. That would be my preference. I don't know that either Blake or Carrie Ann will consent to that.
Do you anticipate being like,
Um,
she's been sending some really nasty mail about him, which could help you.
So, my parents were in Republican Party leadership in Davis County, and they left last year, entirely unrelated to my campaign. And the reason that they left is because the state party is more and more reflecting the national landscape. The bitter reality is the Republican Party at the national level has left Americans behind. It's left us behind. There is no Republican Party anymore. There's a Trump Party. And there was a hope. I genuinely think that the state parties could push back against that, and that you'd see core values persist in a way that were reflective of us, the people that live here. And instead, what has happened is the lack of value at the top of the party structure has started to filter down. The Republican primary it's become quite nasty. I expect that it will get more so in the next 2 weeks before the final ballots are all submitted. We don't have a preference one way or the other, because again, Blake isn't our opponent, Carrie Ann isn't our opponent. It's a broken system. I will say, as far as who might win, Representative Moore has a lot of money, and he's won primaries in the past, and he knows how to win primaries. And in a year where most people are starting to become disenchanted with Trump's MAGA ideals, such as they can be described that way, I think that Carrie Ann finds herself in a position where nastiness doesn't actually equate to support. But we'll see, right? We'll see what happens in 2 weeks.
Well, they didn't do a great job debating, so that's a.
Yeah, like they, terrible format, like in general, terrible format. And it felt like they came in with canned answers, and they sort of just seemed like they read a statement and then kind of moved on. And that's not a debate. It's not an honest engagement of ideas. So, well, it's hard to be passionate, I think, when you know you're in the wrong.
I don't find you.
And
So-
people spend their money fighting each other.
Right, like, let 'em-
They spend all their money.
So, yeah.
Affordability, what sort of things could be done to help make things affordable?
What sort of, well, this is not a broad question
Yeah,
at
you
all.
go first.
I go first. All right. Kendra, you time me so I don't overrun on
60
this.
seconds.
60 seconds. Well, let's start with things that have been broken that can be fixed. So we have an illegal tariff regime that's been put in place, which has turned into an illegal tax regime. So tariffs are taxes. They are. They're taxes on the American people. And tariffs are supposed to be a congressional power. The executive branch assumed that power during this cycle. Congress remained silent and complicit. And then the Supreme Court said, well, actually, those tariffs were illegal. So now we, the American taxpayer, are on the hook on the front end and the back end. We had to pay them in the first place when everything got more expensive. And now that they've been declared illegal, we have to pay to reimburse all of the companies that pass their expense on to us after they paid the tariff. So we've been double hit. So getting rid of illegal tariffs absolutely will help improve affordability for everybody. Telling the president that he can't wage another war in the Middle East and have the Strait of Hormuz closed down will also improve affordability outcomes for absolutely every American. I don't know if anybody pays attention to this. We are in for a very painful summer. Even if this was resolved today, we are in for a very painful summer, and it is unnecessary pain. And it is pain that the administration has already said they don't care about. Trump has been on the record repeatedly saying he does not care and he does not think about Americans when he's making decisions. I don't have any other clearer sort of like indication that they don't care about us than them directly saying we don't care about you, and then making choices that prove they don't actually care about us. Those are immediate things, right? I think there's a lot we could talk about on housing. There's a lot we could talk about on healthcare. Maybe those are more specific questions that we could get into. But just general affordability, getting rid of an illegal tariff regime, stopping a war in the Middle East that is making everybody's life more difficult and destroying American credibility across the globe would be good places to start.
And those are things that, on a state level, I would have no control over.
Yep.
However, for me, what I look at is affordability in a broad definition. So yes, there are some things we can look at in terms of homes and housing affordability, so zoning issues and things like that. However, affordability is bigger than that. It's also about how much money we make so that we can afford these things. So how can we start to look at how people are paid in Utah, and specifically in Cache Valley? The fact that we still lag behind the rest of the state on wages is ridiculous. Maybe at one point in time, Cache Valley was a more affordable place to live, but that's not the case anymore. So we need to start addressing it from that angle too. Additionally, utilities. Yes, I work at a nature center, and so I'm going to be all about green energy until the cows come home. But it's also the most affordable source of energy available. So yes, it is better for the environment. It is also better for our wallets, and we need to start embracing that. The fact that this year we saw Rocky Mountain Power put out their plan for the next few years and are not investing in green energy, that is appalling, especially when there is no other competition for them. So what can we do to start better investing in these things that do make life more affordable for us on a daily basis? And then the third part of that is they keep giving us these income tax cuts that do nothing. Last year, that they brag about how much they've cut in taxes. It's going to be a whopping $30 in my pocket for the entire year. That is not making my life more affordable. The average Utahn and I say this because you can look up how much I make if you want. I work at a nonprofit. It's public information. The average Utahn gets $48 out of this income tax cut. That is not making life more affordable. It is actually making your life more expensive, because the cumulative amount of that money means that you're gonna lose the programs and the things that engage your kids over the summer, that make your schools better, that make your life richer. It's gonna make your life more expensive. Can we look at cutting the state sales tax on food? Because that will make your life more affordable, as opposed to cutting our income tax. There are better ways to do this than continually cutting something that just means we lose programs. And I say that from experience, because one of the programs that got cut this year is a major grant for Stokes Nature Center that we are gonna have to figure out how to replace. And it was done at the last minute with no debate, no public comment at all. So things like that that keep happening, and it's not benefiting us in any way.
Well, and I would just like a follow-up on that. So every time the state cuts the income tax, they shift the burden onto us in property taxes. So we still have schools that need funded. We still have services that exist. And so when the state cuts the income tax, we might save $30 in our pocket, but then my property tax goes up $100 or $1,000 because they shift the burden onto us through property taxes. What an income tax cut does is disproportionately advantages the wealthiest part of Utah. And I was raised to believe that if you benefited from the system, you have to put back into the system. The wealthiest Utahns are wealthy because they benefited from our schools. They use our roads. They have access to our fire services, our police services, our community services, our libraries. All of these public services allowed them to be as successful as they are. And it used to be, we knew that we had a moral obligation to pass it forward to the next generation. That's why the income tax exists as a progressive tax, so that the people who do the best in the system can help those who didn't have the same opportunities. And the legislature likes to talk about cutting income tax, but it just makes our life more expensive at the end of the day. It's bad policy. Sorry.
We agree.
It makes me grumpy. All the way in the back and then.
I think a real opening for the Democratic Party is getting back to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and how we have let a king take over America. And if Congress, which Peter, I'm sure you're going to be involved in, if they get back to the regular order of things, have their committees work, have legislation fought back and forth between the two philosophies, and then something comes out that we can all benefit from. Are you campaigning on that issue at all, or am I up in the night?
So I get this one specifically for me. So we are actually part of multiple organizations, groups like Unrig Washington, right, that are specifically focused on saying we have a constitutional legal structure that clearly defines the balance of power within the government. Congress is not a co-equal branch. Congress is the most powerful branch of our federal government by design. I actually used to teach this to freshmen at USU for years. Congress is where the authority of the people is vested. It is the branch of government that is most closely connected to us. The judiciary is appointed. They're never elected. The President of the United States technically has electors between us and that presidential decision. It is our representatives that are closest to us and granted the most power in our federal system. Are we campaigning on that? Absolutely. Because I think at the end of the day, the system didn't break just on happenstance. Okay? It broke because we as Americans stopped doing what we needed to do in electing honest, forthright individuals that represent us and not some special interest. And it broke because our public servants have stopped serving the public. Members of Congress should not be able to trade stock. Their families should not be able to trade individual stock. The executive branch should not be able to trade individual stock. Their immediate family should not be able to trade individual stock. There's a trend here, right? We should not have public servants who personally financially benefit from their role in office. We should not have public servants who prioritize corporate interests ahead of the needs of communities and families. I look at large corporations that receive tax breaks while also paying their workers too little to effectively live without requiring government programs. You can't have it both ways, right? You can't have it both ways. You need to be meaningfully contributing back to your community. Congress should stand up for the American people. And the reason that Donald Trump has become empowered to do what he is doing today is because Congress has abrogated that responsibility. And I will not put the blame there solely on Republicans. We have seen a trend of Congress refusing to legislate and refusing to enact law and giving its authority tacitly to the other two branches. We have more executive orders in the Obama and the Biden and the Trump administrations over the last 20 years than at any other point in American history. This is very much a trend towards executive authority. The inevitable outcome of that is dictatorship. Congress should be our check on that power, and they can be. They choose not to be.
Consciously, that they elect a Speaker of the House who is in the president's pocket, who will do anything, he'll adjourn Congress rather than take a vote. And when you say we have to fight the system, isn't part of it breaking that stranglehold on all three branches of the government?
Absolutely. Which is one of the reasons why I'm actually I'm a proponent of term limits. This conversation has come up. I think members of the House and the Senate should serve longer than 2 years or 4 years, right? It takes time to get good at your job. I have personally said that I will not serve more than 6 years. That if you think I'm a good representative and you want me to keep serving, I will go back to the House 2 more times after this. I think that a term limit of 10 to 12 years for representatives makes sense. For senators, 2 terms, no more than 3 terms, and an enforceable code of ethics for the Supreme Court. You have to be able to look at the court and say, I'm sorry, if somebody parked an RV in your driveway, you don't get to go ahead and sit on their cases. When they have business before the court, you have to recuse yourself. I would actually go further. I would say that the Supreme Court should be expanded to have 1 court per district court, like 1 justice per district court, and that those district justices be allowed to police the judiciary. So those justices should be allowed to clean up their own house.
I want to extend that to the state government too.
Yes. Yeah, we should have term limits at the state government level as well. I actually had that conversation yesterday, I think it was. I got one of the many questionnaires that you get when you're running for office, and one of the questions was about like, what would I support in terms of term limits, et cetera. And one of the things I suggested is not only having term limits for the sake of having new leadership, but also hopefully creating a way for a current sitting legislator to mentor someone to follow them, so that we are creating this process for someone to come in, or at least to feel confident to run. And that way we don't end up in a situation like my opponent's been unopposed since 2018. There was no other choice. Who was going to come in? And he didn't even get elected the first time. The person before him dropped out and he got appointed. And in Utah, more than any other state, what gets you elected is incumbency. It's like 98% of incumbents get reelected in Utah. It's just the way it is. So if we want to change that, we need to have term limits, clearly. But creating a program or a way for us to be mentoring those that we think could step into a future leadership role. Because we need new leadership because it brings new ideas. I say that all the time, even at Stokes Nature Center. And for those of you in here that support Stokes, I don't hope this doesn't come as a surprise. I should not be at Stokes much longer. Nonprofits need new leadership too, because you bring new ideas, new perspectives, and it ensures that everybody gets equal representation within the organization, but also within your government. So when your government doesn't look like the people it serves, when they've been there too long and they've become disconnected from their community, we've got to figure out a way to change that. And term limits are essential, but so are creating incentives for us to ensure we're getting someone to come in. And also always having finance, having unopposed positions. To me, that is the antithesis of democracy. Democracy requires choice. And so when there is no choice, there is no democracy. So we need to have opponents.
Here, we've got, so I think these two, and then there, and then over here. I think this one's yours first, Kendra.
We'll see.
This question is for both of you. I've heard, well, there's been a lot of talk, Bernie Sanders, the billionaire tax. Something like that has been enacted in Washington and California. So your stance on that, yea or nay, good or bad, and I'm seeking information. Then also at the federal level.
Yeah, I think, so our income tax has always been designed to be more tax on those that make more money, but we've gotten away from that in that we've created so many ways for people to get out of paying what they should owe, so many deductions and credits and things to the point that those with the most are actually paying the least. And so we need to figure out how to fix that. And whether that is a billionaire tax or it's better enforcing the taxes that we already have, whatever that is, we have to fix it because it does matter when a teacher is paying more in taxes than a CEO, because that affects their ability to afford a home. Like everything is connected. This is all interconnected. So I don't know if the saying billionaire tax has been opposed in California or Washington is right for Utah. It probably is not. We are a different state. But there does have to be a way for us to look at ensuring that those with the most are also paying the most, because that is the idea of equitability within our system. It also goes to ensuring that we have the money to have the roads that they're driving on and have the schools that their children go to. So it benefits all of us when we all pay equally into a system that we all also benefit from.
And at the federal level, it's very much about closing tax loopholes. So just very briefly, when we think about the tax system, you can think about it as structured in three ways. If we all make $1 million, right, we've got $1 million for three different groups. One group of people earned $1 million because they went to work every day, which is most of us, right? We're wage earners. That's how we earned our income. We have a progressive tax rate that says you don't get taxed at all for your first X amount of dollars, and then anything you make between 50 and 100,000 gets taxed at this percent, and then 100 to 200,000 at this percent, and then anything over 200,000 gets taxed at the highest possible tax rate, right? That would be our tax structure, which means that at the end of the day, I'm really only taking home maybe $600,000 to $700,000. I earned $1 million, but taxes mean I only bring home $600,000 to $700,000. So there's a second group. The second group made $1 million by investing in the stock market and then selling those stocks. They have a flat tax of like 18%, which is lower than any of the progressive tax rates. So if I'm already wealthy and I invest in the stock market and then sell assets from the stock market, they're taxed differently than a person who has to go to work every day. So I actually end up with closer to $800,000 of that $1 million in assets. So that's a problem for everybody else. And then at the very extreme, we have those who, this would be the billionaires, right? What they do is they don't actually sell their assets. They take a loan. So they go to a bank and they say, hey, I'm worth $1 billion on paper. Can you give me $3 million this year for a loan? That's not income. It's considered debt. And so when tax season happens, guess what? That $1 billion grew another 10%, 15% on paper. They lived off of a $3 billion loan, and then they go ahead and pay $0 in taxes. And then the next year, they get to take another loan. While their assets continue to appreciate on paper, they pay nothing back into the system that allowed them to get wealthy and to become even wealthier. Those are the loopholes that need to be closed. I don't know that the California version or the Washington version is the best idea at a federal level, but I will say this. New York City, California, and Washington have all proved the lie. Billionaires aren't going to flee the United States just because we ask them to pay their fair share. Because New York City has asked, Washington is asking, California is asking, and guess what? They're still here. because this does still happen to be the largest, most productive economy in the world. It is a country that still has some of the best, most well-trained workers in the world. It is a country that has access to resources and opportunities not available anywhere else. So they want to be here. They just need to pay their fair share. And anytime a billionaire says to us, well, if you make me pay my fair share, I'm going to leave, then my response is, you're welcome to go. Because you haven't helped us anyway. You've profited from our communities, you have taken from our people and left nothing in return. You're welcome to take that somewhere else. So again, the general idea of closing tax loopholes, of making sure that the wealthiest they're doing just what we have to do as regular people, yeah, I'm very much in favor of that. Here and then there and then here.
That was kind of basically what I was wondering about. So.
Okay, please.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with term limits. And so, but in terms of a net, how would you do it? So I'm sure that if you're in Congress today, you've got colleagues who really want to stay in office. And probably
Yeah.
agree with you, the term limit could solve a lot of problems, but wouldn't want to do it. You caucus, you form a caucus, or what would you do to try to make that happen?
Yeah, so making term limits happens means joining with other like-minded individuals. This is where groups like Take Back Congress, which I'm also a part of, or Unrig Washington, right? It's building that coalition. And I was taught that every good compromise leaves everybody angry. Nobody gets everything they want. And so if we had a term limit bill that allowed my existing colleagues in Congress to serve out their term, but then their replacement was term limited going forward, okay, fine. Like, that's a compromise that I can accept, right? Because humans tend to be a little selfish and self-interested. And if that's what I need to do is accept 10 more years of our existing leadership structure before we start to see regular turnover, okay, like, that's a compromise that I can accept if it means that we do get a solution so that my kids don't inherit the same broken system that I had. I'm willing to plant that tree now to finally see the fruits 20 years later. We should have planted the tree 20 years ago, but we didn't, so we'll plant it today.
Do you have colleagues in mind that you would caucus with?
So many of us are working through the general election right now. There's about 100 people that are part of these organizations that I am also part of. So if you think about it, the House has 435 members. If all 100 of us get elected, that's almost a quarter of the House, where we can say we won't do anything on any other legislation until this happens. Like, that's a pretty effective voting block to start to push through a single issue. To be entirely candid with you, I don't think we'd get term limits done in 2 years. I genuinely don't. I think it would take time to go ahead and build up more support. But what it will do is make sure that that is a conversation in every election going forward, right? People will start to say, well, how do you think about term limits? What do you think about term limits? And I'm going to make my voting decision based off of whether or not you're going to fix this broken system. That's where that conversation has to start.
Wouldn't that need a constitutional amendment?
It would need a constitutional amendment.
But
Yep. So we had an amendment for the 25th. This would be similar to that.
Yeah, so I like your messaging about, working, with various groups and being conciliatory. But I do wonder, are you going to push for, investigations and congressional oversight when it comes to Trump and kind of his henchmen throughout various levels of government when it comes to the pay-to-play schemes,
Yeah.
pardons? It feels like every other day there's some new corruption scandal that barely stays in the headlines for 24 hours, which
Because there's some other one,
administration,
yeah.
That would have been, going for months, like front page news.
Let me, I think, be clear about the difference between compromise and conciliatory. I'm not interested in allowing corruption to persist. And I'll be very frank with everybody here, whether you're a Democrat or Republican or an independent. When we win in November, I anticipate that I'll probably hold the seat for 2 years. Because there is no doubt in my mind that the Utah GOP will throw everything and the kitchen sink at us to go ahead and get the seat back. If we think the primary is dirty between Carrie Ann Lisenby and Blake Moore right now, I'm sure we have seen nothing yet when we actually secure the seat and do something with it. Which means from my perspective, I have 2 years to do as much good as I possibly can do. My goal is not to get reelected by playing it safe. My goal is to serve the people that sent me to Congress, which means that I have a duty and a responsibility that if someone has violated their oath of office, if they have violated the Constitution of the United States, then I need to be the one pushing for oversight. That's my duty, right? As a congressional representative, it is to say, did you violate the oath of office? Is there suspicion, reasonable, like, do we have reasonable evidence to suggest that you have? Then it's time for an oversight hearing. And if that oversight hearing does prove that you have violated your oath of office, then we need to push for impeachment. And I need to vote for impeachment if the evidence there shows that you have violated your oath of office. That doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, because this should be a nonpartisan issue. Now, the reality of the situation is the House, if it does become a Democrat-leaning House this election cycle, will have the power to impeach. But impeachment only gets finalized in the Senate, which requires a 2/3 vote. And if past precedent is anything to go on, it is unlikely that the Senate will actually follow through on those motions, which raises the question, is it still worth doing? Is it still worth using that time and that effort and those resources? At the end of the day, my disposition is to say yes, because this is about rebuilding and restoring trust between Americans and their government. And if there are representatives or senators or political parties that refuse to put their oath of office ahead of power, then every American should be able to see that. And every American should be able to make a decision about what kind of government we actually want. And so, yeah, I would still push for that. Because I don't want, again, this goes back to not just me, but the generations that come after. If you guys are under the age of 25, you have never seen a functional government in the United States. And that's our fault, right? That is the fault of everybody older than you, because we didn't give you a system that worked. And it's our obligation to fix it. So that's what we'll do. We'll fix it, because that's what needs to be done. Well, and I want to be clear, that's not like we should all feel like guilty and a lot of blame. We should acknowledge that it has happened, and then we should say, okay, now we're going to go fix it.
What's your feeling about the Electoral College popular vote for president?
Man, we're getting into some deep cut reforms tonight.
I'll say as a voter.
We're not leaving you out.
Kendra gets to answer this one too. I'm not taking this one alone.
I'm all about the popular vote over the Electoral College as a voter. I feel that it's gotten so entrenched to the point that in many states it feels like there's no point in voting, and that should never be the case in the United States. So I am a very big fan of just going with the popular vote. And I get the argument on the other side. Again, this is about understanding and having conversations with people. I get that it feels like if we move to the popular vote, it shifts power to urban centers and away from our rural states. I understand that. And I don't feel that that's a good enough argument to continue to allow people's voices to not be heard.
I would say that we add at least 1 or 2 more reforms on top of it. So I would suggest that we need to seriously talk about ranked choice voting or something similar. So Utah, there was a poll done 2 weeks ago, maybe it was 2 weeks ago. 60% of Utahns don't like either political party, straight up. And they are justified in feeling that way, right? They are. Political parties in the United States have become somewhat entrenched. And does that mean there's no good Republicans and no bad Democrats or vice versa? No, it doesn't mean that. But it does mean that the two-party system sometimes works counterintuitively to the interests of regular Americans. And that's something we just have to acknowledge. A ranked choice voting system would allow Americans to know that their vote matters in every election. And that's what we want. We want people to know that their voice fundamentally matters in an election. I would say that there's another possible reform on top of that, that wouldn't require the dissolution of the Electoral College, but would allow it to be more representative. There is something called a mixed member representative district, or MMR, which exists in other democratic nations. Basically what we do is we acknowledge a couple of truths. First, when Congress was first established, it was about a 1 to 10,000 ratio. So there are 10,000 people for one representative. The last time Congress was expanded was about 100 years ago, and it was 1 to 500,000. We are now sitting at about 1 to 900,000. There's about 900,000 people that live here in northern Utah, which makes it incredibly difficult for any representative to really understand the needs of the community that they're supposed to serve. The communities are just very large now. So you expand Congress, but the way that you expand Congress allows you to have people vote for their geographical district, but also representatives at the state level. And this would say, for example, Utah, we have 2 senators and 4 representatives. So we would add 4 more representatives to Utah, theoretically. And we would cast our votes in the election. And let's say in this election, we get 2 Democrats, because hey, why not? And 2 Republicans get through. That leaves us 4 other representatives that get proportioned based off of the vote that takes place. Well, let's say that the Utah Forward Party is able to capture 20% of the vote this cycle, but they have no representatives from the state in Congress. It's 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. So of those 4 additional state level reps, they would get 1, right? Because the people that voted, even though that's not my party, they still deserve representation too. So those additional representatives would be allocated based off of the proportion of the vote. What that means is every vote matters. Every vote matters. You stay home, you don't get represented. And the system itself is designed now to make sure that your vote actually counts for representation. Is that reform possible? Sure. Is it likely in the near future? I don't think so. But Utah could certainly sign on to the compact that I think we're up to 22 other states now?
Ways to go, that close.
Yeah. That have said our electoral votes will always go to the popular vote. Like that is a starting point, right? And I think that makes the popular vote matter in every single state. Because even if you live in a predominantly Republican or a predominantly Democrat area, you know that every vote cast will eventually help determine the winner of a presidential cycle. And that's better than what we have right now. So here and then here.
I was just curious, do you think mail-in voting is safe in our state?
Yes.
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 No, I think it's
Yes.
safe. I think we're safe from having.
Oh, no.
I mean, is it safe from our government?
No, I mean, it already isn't. They've already passed the law to make it harder for mail-in voting. It won't take effect this year, but it is coming.
2029.
So, I mean, already when you register, you now have to choose if you want mail-in voting. So no, I don't think it is. And I've said this in other contexts, but it's true in this too. The what is not going to change if we don't change the who, because it's clear that who's in office right now does not want mail-in voting. And so we're not necessarily always going to be able to change their minds, because the people were very loud and very clear that they wanted to keep mail-in voting, and then they voted against it anyway. So obviously, it requires changing the who if we want to be able to go back on that, which the good news is, since it doesn't take effect till 2029, if we get a wholly different legislature this year, we could undo that before it takes effect. Because we've all seen it. There's so many statistics in Utah how much voting went up when we had universal mail-in voting. The lieutenant governor herself has talked about how safe it is, and that there is no need to worry about it. So if we truly want people to have a voice, mail-in voting is clearly the way to go. There are other countries in the world that now vote by text. Like, there are so many countries that are really far ahead of us. Why we're upset about mail-in voting, I'm not entirely sure. But no, I don't think it is. I think they'll continue to restrict it unless we change the who, at least for now, because they are taking direction from others that want us to believe that it's not safe. Yeah.
Good job, there's Kendra.
Others, those.
Please.
So at the end of the discussion about the Electoral College, you mentioned a compact that some states have signed on to. I'm not sure if we're thinking of different compacts, or maybe it just wasn't worded very well, or I didn't register my brain properly. My understanding of that compact, that some of the states had signed on to, but not that, that states would give their votes to the popular vote, but rather it would divide it according to the popular vote.
Both.
Are we thinking of the same?
There's
compact, or-
two different, yeah.
Okay.
So a proportional breakout, I think, is fantastic. I genuinely do. And
It's a good compromise.
yeah.
Where we're at, you know,
I
versus total abolition.
I am in favor. So again, we talk about partisan issues and bipartisan issues, but we should also talk about nonpartisan issues. So nonpartisan issues really should be like there should be no political influence on how we see an issue. It's just, is it good governance or not? Anything that allows Americans to be better represented, to have a tighter and more authentic connection with their government, bless you, to be able to honestly engage in civics is good. That's a nonpartisan thing. That is good. We want a stronger, healthier democracy and republic. And anything that we can do that allows us to have a stronger, healthier democracy and republic is a good thing. It's one of the reasons why Governor Cox's comments recently have irritated me as much as they have.
Time.
Oh, we have the room till 8:30.
Sweet.
So we've got a few extra minutes. I asked. Yeah.
So as we know, Utah is in a drought.
Mhm.
And
It's all yours, Kendra.
snowpack this year has been terrible. And so I'm worried about this summer and the future, not being able to shower, looking to put water coming in the shower. What kind of things are you going to do to enable or allow us to have, water?
Yeah, it's a good question. So first of all, just in regards to timeline, I have had a long conversation with one of the professors up at USU who studies snowpack for a living. It's a fascinating job. Who says it's actually not this year we need to worry about, it's next year.
Yeah.
This year will be okay because you're gonna get a lot of rain this year, which is gonna make it feel like it's okay, but next year we won't. And so it is forecasted we will have another low snowpack year and also less rain next year because the El Nino La Nina situation will be in a different cycle. And so next year will actually be where we feel it the worst. And also, interestingly, up here, we feel it the least because we get most of the water first. And our decisions are what cause drought in the rest of the state. And we don't put that together very well. Neither do a lot of funders, I can tell you, having just had a long argument with someone from Great Salt Lake about funding one of our projects for community education about the impact of Cache Valley on Great Salt Lake. For those of you that don't know, 60% of the water in Great Salt Lake comes from the Bear River. So it's not 60% of the Bear River ends up in Salt Lake, and 60% of Salt Lake is the Bear River. So if we make poor decisions, the Salt Lake disappears. And we need to start shifting our mindset about how we impact our state in this part of the state, but also the rest of the state. We have too many funders that only want solutions for Salt Lake within 10 miles of Salt Lake. Well, by the time you get there, it's too late. If we've already used the water, it's not going to get to 10 miles within Salt Lake. So we've got to refocus how we impact the state around us. So that's one thing, reshifting how we fund projects that really impact Salt Lake. Also, we've seen several initiatives started, but not well advertised, from trying to get people to sell their shares of water back to Salt Lake. So few people knew about that. And so the legislature was like, well, it's not working, let's just get rid of it. I'm like, well, did you advertise it? Do people know this is a thing? We're not doing a good job of spreading the word about these impacts that we can have. And the same goes for converting your yards or anything to zero escaping. The grants for that, none of them are in Cache Valley. Again, this is where we impact Salt Lake. Why are those grants not good for us? Why is it only Salt Lake and southern Utah that can participate instead of focusing on where the water actually comes from? So it's really shifting our mindset about how we impact it. It is also going to require some sacrifice. It's no more of this, we should do a good job and pray. No, it is we need to do these things and we will do these things. We need to have the true value of water. Our water is so subsidized, we don't actually have an idea of how expensive it is. Our water is not nearly paid for at the level of Colorado, and our water should be more expensive than Colorado's because we have less of it. That is the idea of supply and demand, but it's not. And I understand so many of the challenges there, and affordability and everything comes into play as well. So there does have to be a balance, but it starts with shifting how we look at what really impacts our state in terms of water. But yes, next year is going to be hard. We do need to be thinking now about not watering our lawns, not just for this summer, but also for next year. And understanding that yellow grass is beautiful, and that no grass is even more beautiful. And those are small things. And yes, is my cutting my shower time going to magically raise the level of Salt Lake? Not necessarily. But can we create these programs that better educate people on what truly impacts Salt Lake? Because our snowpack is directly related to Salt Lake as well. They feed each other. And so we need both simultaneously. And so does our economy. We've seen that as well. So we've got to really shift how we value what impacts our environment.
And then,
Just on that same note, data center, giant data
Yes.
center in the
Yes.
county next door, it's like kind of plays into that issue. So
Yes.
I'm wondering if you guys have any plans to
Yes, absolutely. I spoke at the rally about that. First and foremost, it boils down to a lot of what we've been saying about other issues. It comes to listening to the people that you're there to serve, and not telling them that they just have to accept it, but that actually truly listening to them. I said it at the rally, but it is very true. 2,000 jobs don't matter if the environment is so destroyed, no one can live there to work those jobs. So we have to find a balance. Yes, we need good paying jobs, but we more need a functioning environment to live in, to be able to work the jobs around us. It is a matter of listening to the communities where you're trying to put these resources. And if the community is loudly saying that is not something they need or want, then it is the requirement of your representation to listen to that. And we're seeing it across Utah, that people do not want this. And I also think there are better ways to go about it than pushing a decision through and not properly educating people on what the impact is. Telling us that you're going to recycle water, but not giving us the plan on how that works. Or telling us that you're going to someday use renewable energy, but not at the beginning. Like, what's the timeline? How do we enforce this? And then also we've been talking about these tax breaks and all. Again, why are we instituting these massive tax breaks on organizations that are going to cause problems that our government then has to fix? Where is that money going to come from? So there is a balance, I understand that, between generating jobs and creating opportunity and meeting the needs of national security. But there is also a necessity to listen to the communities where we're trying to put these. And the science does not support that data center being there. I did appreciate the suggestion by someone that, I believe is it Stuart Adams? No, one of them owns a massive property down in southern Utah. And they're like, let's just put it there. And I was like, well. Yeah.
sure, even less water problems down there,
Probably
right?
less, right?
We've been pretty outspoken on this from day one. Our campaign actually has a lot of volunteer work that cross-coordinates with organizations like BEAR, who have been pretty actively engaged in this space. To Kendra's point, 98% of Box Elder residents, when asked for comment, said they were either opposed or wanted to wait on a decision. 98%. So there were several hundred comments. The Salt Lake Trib did an assessment and analysis of them. 98% said either no, or we don't know enough because you haven't told us enough about what's going to actually happen here. So just take some time, do the environmental impact studies, do the employment impact studies, do the GSL impact studies, and then we can make a decision. Only 2% said yes, and then the commissioner said, I've got a letter here from somebody who supports it. I'm going to read that letter. And then they went to a closed room and they voted yes, right? That is not representative government. At its core, that's not representative government. Could the data center be good for a community? Sure. Is it right for Box Elder? No. We've had this conversation with other folks. There's a reason that we launch our spacecraft from Cape Canaveral in Florida. There's a physics equation associated with getting stuff into space. And Cape Canaveral happens to be a really good place to do that. So we've put a data center there. So we've put our space facilities there. Data centers require significant amounts of energy, significant amount of water, and have a really notable impact on the local environment. Everywhere that we have seen data centers go in other communities, we have immediately started to see some unintended consequences. There was some reporting about data centers, I think in Tennessee, where chickens now are no longer laying eggs because the high pitch hum associated with the facilities is apparently disrupting the poultry stock. Like, nobody knew that was going to happen, but now that we know what is happening, well, the data center still is there, and those chicken farmers are going to have to relocate because the data center is bigger than they are, and that's just how this is going to turn out. And so we are very much opposed to any sort of decisions that are made that prioritize corporate interests over the welfare of the community and take the community's voice out of that decision-making process. So here and then here. This is where things like ranked choice voting would effectively get rid of the need to gerrymander, or a mixed member representative district would get rid of the need to gerrymander. Republicans do it, Democrats do it. Republicans are more heavily invested right now because they understand that if there is a change in political power in Congress, accountability will start to happen. And they have done so, like, this is at the national level, right? There has been so much corruption that has happened over the last 2 years. Kristi Noem got herself a $200 million plane. That was our money, right? I didn't agree to that. And then she got fired, but kept the plane apparently. I don't know. No, she didn't actually get to keep the plane. She wasn't that bad. But it shouldn't be down here. Like, you should at least have to hop a little bit to get over the top of it. It's fundamentally undemocratic. It is. It's fundamentally undemocratic. And I think it is the worst sort of outcome that every time a state like Utah, whose population gathers together and says, you know what, we collectively think gerrymandering is bad. Let's go ahead and make sure we have an independent commission that is vested with the authority to draw maps that are representative of the people of Utah, because the legislature has got to stop picking its own voters. Voters should get to pick their representatives. The legislature pushes back and says, you can't take our power away. It's not your power, it's ours. Like, it's our power, it's our government. And it's really frustrating to see gerrymandering happen regardless of the political party behind it. It's fundamentally un-American, and yet at the same time, it is the most American institution there is. We've had it for 200 years.
What about the Supreme Court?
The Supreme Court needs an enforceable code of ethics, 100%. And like I said earlier, I would also be in favor of district courts being allowed to go ahead and weigh in on the ethics of the Supreme Court. So if the justices are going to serve terms that are only ended through impeachment or through death, then the justice system needs to have the ability to police itself. I believe that most justices within our courts, our federal system, are honest people. They have integrity. They do not like to see their profession be denigrated because of the decisions of a very few people. They want to be honest representatives who uphold the law, right? That's their job, is to make sure that the law is interpreted appropriately and then rely on the enforcement mechanism of the executive. The judicial system should be allowed to have the authority to police itself. And I honestly feel like if that happened, we would not have the same degree of ethical concerns that we see right now within the court. It would make them far less likely to be partisan on one way or the other. They should just be calling balls and strikes, and they're not anymore. We had a couple other hands.
So I don't think any community should be forced to have a data center or any other business that they don't want, especially when it's so clear 98% against. I mean, I can't see how anyone can justify, from a democracy standpoint, or a legal standpoint, enforcing it down the throats of people.
I agree.
We agree.
So maybe we should have a state initiative as to data centers. If the people don't want it, they shouldn't be allowed in the state. There are other states with a lot more water than Utah. Let them take that water.
It is, first of all, yes, I think it also has exposed a need to take a look at what issues can be referendums for the people as well. We're seeing that in Box Elder right now, that they're being told they're not allowed to have a referendum on it. And we need to better clarify what it means to live in a democracy, and that if the people are asking for a referendum on something that is so impactful on them and their families, that they deserve to be able to say it loudly and clearly through the ballot box.
Maybe have an initiative that prohibits data centers in the state. A lot of states have more water than Utah. Utah is the second driest state in the nation. So I don't think data centers should be forced.
Well, we're the second driest state, but we are second in the country for the amount of water we use. Wow. We flipped it. Yeah, so adding data centers really seems like a bad idea. Yeah, but there are communities in this country that are doing that. We've seen that through counties and cities where they have spoken up and said they don't want a data center there. And so it is happening more on a local level, I think, than a state level. But this whole process has exposed the need, I think, for several things that we've taken for granted, about our ability to have a ballot initiative, our ability to speak up, and noticing those holes that we need to fill so that people can really speak up when it matters.
We have time for probably 2 more questions, so we'll go there in the back and then right here.
One of the things that I would like to know is why data centers got this thing going they did. One of the things that we got gaslighted about is that the country needs it. And everybody's saying the country needs it. And the governor gaslights us too. Not only that, our whole representation.
Can I just tag on to that comment? Which is a bigger, huger thing beyond us, because I've never heard of MIDA
Oh, yeah.
before. But
Yeah.
apparently it's been around 2012, 2013.
2008.
And one of the things I didn't realize they have been doing, besides data centers, is there's many military people suing because they're getting sick in their housing,
Yes.
for molding and not air conditioning and that. But yet MIDA was able to purchase Deer Valley Resort areas.
Yeah.
And build luxury condos for the military, but then the government's purchased a few that don't have to go to military people. So I think besides just that, I'm really worried about my.
I think there needs to be more oversight of it. We need to make sure that there's at least some representation on MIDA that is elected by the people, and that it is much clearer to the community who is, the fact that we're just now finding out who's on that committee, and that I think almost all of them are land developers, like that. I mean, almost all of our legislature is land developers, but I mean, it's fishy in and of itself, and you should never feel like your government is fishy. Like, yeah, so we need to re-examine how that was formed. I think at some point in time there was some good intention behind it, because we do have a large base here that supports a huge amount of employment, my spouse included. He is active duty Air Force, and that's why we moved to Utah. So yes, it is a huge part of our state, and we need to be sure that we are taking care of them. I lived in that base housing for 8 months.
Yeah, why couldn't they give you a luxury?
Yeah, they didn't give me anything. So I fully understand, because base housing is not good. It's
What are you talking about? It's the luxury.
It was, yeah. Okay, so beside the point. But, so there is a place for it, but there needs to be more accountability to the people in the state if they're gonna be making decisions like that impact all of us, not just the military. And there's no decision in this state that will only impact the military, because our Hill employs more civilians than just about any other base in the country. So we have to honor that it is not just about the military. And I fully support re-examining and reforming MIDA to be sure that they better answer to the people. But in regards to the question about data centers, part of the problem is we let AI take off without any regulation whatsoever. And we're still there. Yes, and so you've got billionaires, and now possibly the world's first trillionaire, which I have a lot of opinions about that, really forcing it because there's money behind it. Now, at this point, it is taking over a lot of our lives. If You go on your phone right now and you just Google something, your first entry is going to be an AI response, unless you physically turn it off, which you can do if you want to. But it is coming in various ways, including your customer service person when you use the chatbot online. Like, it is infiltrating various places, but without any regulation. And that is what's happening. That is why we need these data centers, supposedly, is because it's just grown so much that we have to meet this need. But there's a conversation to be had there about, can we talk about, do we actually need this much AI? As opposed to just building these massive data centers to meet a constructed need that no one is really asking for. And I know there is this argument about letting China take over. There is a lot of issue there too, in that most green energy in the world, solar panels and batteries included, were invented in the US. China has now outpaced us because capitalism said they were willing to offer me more money, so I sold them my technology. No one was concerned about that. And now we're concerned about China taking over when there's AI. We sold them our data for green energy, but now we're worried. So we seem to have our priorities a little messed up about what really matters. I have actually had a long conversation with someone who works in software in China who's talked about that they are nowhere near competing with us on AI. They have a very decentralized model. It is not what we think it is. It is not what our government is telling us it is. So there is also that, a lot of misinformation that requires that we fully understand what we're getting into. But yeah, regulation comes to the national level, so.
Starts with the states.
Both, yeah.
We have time for one more question, just very briefly on data centers. I would just like to touch on one point. If this is a national security concern, like if this is legitimately a national security concern that the United States has, I would just like to make two observations. One, the United States currently has over 4,500 data centers. China has like 400, okay? Which means that if we look at actual capacity, the United States already has significantly more capacity. So that's one. Two, in times of true national crisis, every American is expected to step up for the benefit of the community, and that includes corporate America. During World War II, Ford stopped making cars and started making bombers. They went ahead and transitioned their production lines to meet a national security concern. Utah has 20 to 30 data centers already. 47 now. Okay. Is that constructed though? Because I have seen two different numbers on that.
Versus the pre.
Yeah. If there's a real national security need that is an actual crisis moment for the United States, we have data center capacity that already exists. Why is that capacity not being asked to be transitioned to support a viable threat to our national security? Why are corporations not being asked to sacrifice the same way that communities are? That's a question that we should all be asking ourselves. If this isn't a national security issue and it's just a justification to create more corporate profit, that's a different conversation. But if it is a national security issue, why are corporations not being asked to do what communities are, which is sacrifice? They've done it in the past when there were real crises facing the nation. Why aren't they doing it today? Last question, then we got to go.
Okay, so I think one of the most polarizing questions today.
Oh, good.
I talked with a friend who came from Uruguay as a naturalized citizen. And she is absolutely convinced that we're exporting the worst of the worst. And I know that here in Logan, ICE is over at traffic court at the Spanish-speaking sessions, picking people up who've come to pay traffic tickets in the parking lot and out of the courtroom. So where do we go with this? Because people don't understand.
I don't know what order we're in now.
I'll take it. She said ICE. We'll make it a federal issue. I mean, there's state interplay. This will be a federal one, and then we'll wrap up. Immigration is a fundamentally broken system in the United States. I think we should all be able to acknowledge that as a starting point. So that's number one. Number two, the United States has always been dependent on immigrants. Unless you here are Native American or indigenous, your family's an immigrant. My family's been here in some degree or another since before the American Revolution, and we emigrated from somewhere. We were once somebody else's trash. It's okay, we can say that, because
I mean, if you talk about yourself.
right? Like it's about us. We were rabble rousers. We were kicked out of the countries we were in, and we were sent here to be with the other rabble rousers. So that's number two. We all come from somewhere. And number three, immigration is a core strength of our nation, and it always has been. Immigrants work hard. Immigrants contribute to the system. Immigrants have lower crime rates than native-born Americans. Second-generation immigrants tend to be better educated because they value and respect what had to be earned. We need a system that acknowledges that when good people come here, work hard, and keep the law, that they're given an opportunity to become citizens, and it doesn't take them 20 or 30 years, which is what happens right now. You can be an honest, hardworking person, you can come to the United States, and it might take you 10 years to even get here, and it might take you another 20 years before you can actually become a citizen. That's a fundamentally broken system. So we should acknowledge that. Number two, we have seen humane immigration enforcement. Every nation is allowed to enforce immigration within its borders. That is part of actually the definition of a nation. Can a nation defend its borders? If it can't, then it's not actually a nation. We all collectively have a right to have a secure community. Immigration enforcement in the past acknowledged this. If somebody came here illegally and they committed a crime, they would end up in a local court. And then their records were checked against INS. And if it was found that that individual was here illegally, then federal agents would come and take that individual and take them to a prison where there was humane treatment, not a concentration camp by any other name. Right now, that isn't what's happening. We have an immigration system that has collected American citizens, that has seen women and children raped within the confines. If you're not pregnant as a woman when you got there, and you are pregnant now, I don't know how to tell this to you delicately, but that was not immaculate conception. That happened as a direct result of your interaction with people who were supposed to uphold your human rights while you availed yourself of the legal system. We have an immigration enforcement that murders American citizens on the streets of American cities. When Alex Preddy died, he was an American. He was legally carrying a firearm that he didn't brandish in any way. He was a nurse going to the aid of another American, and he was killed by federal agents. That's not immigration enforcement. That's terrorism. That's murder. We can have an immigration system that acknowledges that we have always benefited from immigrants, that allows them to earn a path to citizenship, and still maintains the protection of our communities by saying if you violated the law, then you can't stay here. This isn't the place for you because you've broken our laws. We've done it in the past, we can do it again. We actually had immigration reform on the table in 2024. It was bipartisan. Donald Trump specifically asked Republicans to kill it so that he could use immigration as a wedge issue. We all come from somewhere. We all benefit when we have people that come to our country that work hard and that understand that our values, our shared culture, is something that will benefit them and their children and their grandchildren. What we are doing right now is creating wedges. We are making it impossible for people to see themselves as Americans, which is never how an immigration system is supposed to work. We can do something about that. We know what a path forward looks like because we have templates. We just need to have the political will to make those changes. I apologize, we're out of time. I would love to actually have a detailed policy conversation, but we're out of time. Thank you so much all for coming out tonight. You could have been anywhere else this evening, so thank you for coming here. Just a couple of notes before we clear out. We like librarians, so we're going to clean up after ourselves. And two, if you would like to participate, if you would like to do something, both Kendra and I would love to have your help as volunteers. We typically ask a volunteer work maybe 2 to 4 hours a week at the most. There's lots of different ways to help. This is an opportunity for you to get engaged, and it is community-centric work. You're talking to people in your community. We're trying to find ways to help in our community. And so we would love to have your support. Anyway, thank you. All right, let's get our chair.